I'm Michael Rasmussen, and as mentioned, I'm an analyst. And so I spend my days doing research. I research what are the challenges companies face in context of governance, risk management, and compliance, and how do they go about solving those challenges with strategy, process, and technology. When we talk about GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, we can talk about from an enterprise perspective and enterprise GRC strategies, but also layers of governance like third-party governance, risk, and compliance of the extended enterprise, identity governance, risk, and compliance, HR GRC, finance GRC. But one of the areas that's burdening a lot of organizations, and based on the recent research paper I just wrote, is data GRC, data governance, data risk management, and data compliance. And so this is the new data governance, risk, and compliance imperative that we're talking about today, and how to provide an integrated approach to data governance and management. But the challenge is that the business is complex. It's changing minute by minute, second by second. There's new laws and regulations that impact data throughout the organization. The storage of data, the disposition of data, the access to data, privacy requirements, and so much. There's lots of changing laws and regulations. There's a dynamic and changing risk environment from threat vectors and hackers and viruses and worms, oh my, and all those different elements. But the internal business is changing itself. And you think about it, employees change that have access to data, new ones come in, they change roles and responsibilities. There's inherited rights issues and things to access to data, and so much more. But processes change and technology changes and configuration to technology changes. There's so much change. But then the modern organization is not just defined by brick and mortar walls and traditional employees. The modern organization is the extended web of third-party relationships, the suppliers, vendors, outsourcers, service providers, contractors, consultants, brokers, agents, dealers, partners, intermediaries, and more. And they have access to your data. And all this requires that the organization herd the cats and have some strategic approach to governance, risk, and compliance of the data and the data processes around their organization. If you think about it, there's a famous quote by the physicist Fritjof Capra. The physicist stated, a little bit tongue-tied there, the more we study the major problems of our time, the more we come to realize they cannot be understood in isolation. They are systemic problems, which means that they are interconnected and interdependent. Now, the physicist at the time of this quote was talking about biological ecosystems, but he might as well have been talking about data risk and compliance in the modern organization today, that these challenges are interconnected and interdependent. And too often, organizations take this little siloed approach to data governance and then think about, what do I do for this storage issue? What do I do for this, logging issue and recording of communications to customers and things? What do I do for this privacy issue? And they don't think big picture and perspective and how to solve these problems. They've gone in a lot of different directions on how on the access and governance and management of data, with no clear strategy for clear data governance, risk management, and compliance that's integrated and working together. In that context, the way a lot of data management processes and information work reminds me of the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. Now think about it. This is a sprawling mansion that was built in the 1800s. It cost $5.5 million to build then. You calculate inflation, that's one very expensive house today. It took 38 years to build and had 147 different builders. But the key point is it had no design, no blueprint, no architect. At the end of the day, it's got hallways that go to nowhere, staircases that that go up or down to nowhere, doors that open to walls or 20-foot drops. It doesn't make sense. This is a lot of your data governance and many of your organizations, that over the last 38 years, you've had 147 different builders of different aspects of data governance, risk, and compliance, looking at just little pieces of things and not the big picture of things. And it's time we step back and change things. When we look at the data risks in the modern organization, we can look at the structured data risk around data breaches, corruption, reliability, unstructured data risks around data leakage and compliance issues, communication and messaging data risks around eavesdropping, interception risks, compliance violations, the role of AI and the data risks that artificial intelligence introduces with bias in decision-making and data privacy violations, as well as a range of other data governance, risk, and compliance challenges, such as inadequate data governance policies, third-party data governance, and governing the data in that extended array of business relationships of vendors and suppliers and outsourcers and service providers and contractors and consultants. and also non-compliance with evolving regulations. The questions to ask here is, what has changed? Well, organizations have become more data-driven. So the amount of data that needs to be managed has grown exponentially in the organization. With the increase in data breaches and data privacy regulations and other regulations impacting data, redefine data ownership, personal data control is no longer in the hands of its possessor. It's now in the hands of the individual under many jurisdictions, but not all. Individuals have the right to determine who can possess their data, access their data, dictate how their data is used, dispose of their data, or even get value from their data. And then you have the AI and machine learning type requirements and challenges that needs to be able to organize and understand data for it to be effective. There is no AI without an information architecture, and you need good data in for good data out when it comes to are you leveraging artificial intelligence, and that has to be governed properly in the organization. So what are some of the other data governance challenges that we're seeing today? Well, one is the discovery of data. Organizations face the task of identifying and cataloging data from many sources. This process requires a careful approach to ensure that metadata, which provides essential data information, is accurate and consistently up to date. Furthermore, there's a pressing need to manage dark data, information that is not actively used or managed, and reduce data redundancy to optimize storage and enhance data utility. We also need to be discerning whether files contain data that needs to be managed, such as personally identifiable information, intellectual property, content subject to retention and requirements. All that, those decisions around that is very difficult. Too often, metadata is missing because organizations have relied on content creators to classify the content, an added responsibility that is tedious, overlooked, and inconsistently implemented, such as identifying and cataloging data from diverse sources, ensuring metadata and its associated data are accurate and up to date, and managing dark data and reducing that data redundancy. But then you got the collection of data. That's another governance challenge. When it comes to data collection, organizations must adhere to legal and compliance standards, ensuring data is gathered appropriately. A challenge, a very big challenge, that is that not everyone considers data collection necessary to be managed in this context. Some organizations take a manage in place approach. However, a structured process for the collection of data is the ideal approach, as it minimizes data risk exposure when organizations keep inactive data in production, such as risks to modification, deletion, data breach. But we also need to improve data and system performance. When we have inactive data, increases processing overhead and costs while impacting search, browsing, and reporting performance. And what about providing stronger productivity? Data collection must be balanced with privacy considerations, safeguarding individuals' personal information. Additionally, incoming data's sheer volume and velocity necessitates robust management strategies to handle the influx effectively. It's difficult, if not impossible, to adhere to legal and compliance standards when using traditional manual data governance practices. IT and or records managers don't have the resources to review dark data manually. And then we have management of the data. The management of data is another governance challenge that introduces another layer of complexity for organizations. Clear data ownership and stewardship responsibilities must be established, creating a sense of accountability and ensuring that data is handled properly throughout its life cycle in the organization. Implementing the trustworthiness of the data, this includes managing the data from its point of creation through to its eventual deletion in the disposition throughout. Records and data managers have struggled for years to institute records management programs. The problem is that it's difficult to enforce. Relying on employees to consistently manage records according to policy when it's not a core part of their job description and is quickly forgotten when a deadline is looming means a program that relies solely on employees will never be completely effective. And then you have access to data. Access to data is a critical governance challenge, and it's a critical component of data governance, therefore, requiring secure and controlled mechanisms to ensure that only authorized individuals can access sensitive information and regulated information. This involves managing user permissions diligently and maintaining comprehensive access logs. These measures must be balanced with the need to make data accessible for legitimate purposes, ensure that data protection requirements are not compromised in most cases, They rely on employees and their managers to communicate effectively with IT when their role changes, which is a really ineffective process when you think about it. Although access may not be necessary for the new role, employees and their managers are not always incentivized to give up access because you never know when you may want to have access. Keeping access is much easier than asking for access back. And then we have analysis of data. Finally, when it comes to data analysis, organizations must commit to responsible and ethical practices. This means ensuring that data analysis tools and algorithms are unbiased and transparent, particularly in this current generation of artificial intelligence that we're working on. And we need to be able to provide reliable results without prejudice. There's also a need to balance the pursuit of advanced analytics with the imperative to uphold data privacy and security, ensure that the drive for insights does not compromise the integrity and confidentiality of the data. Analysts struggle to get access to the data they need to conduct the analysis. They need to identify which system or systems contain the data they are looking for. They need to identify who is responsible for the data so they can validate the data's integrity. Once they identify the data and its location, they need to figure out how to access it through their analytical tools. This can take days or months when conducted via email. Addressing these combined data governance risks and challenges is critical for organizations aiming to leverage their data assets while upholding ethical standards and complying with regulatory requirements, ensuring a robust and responsible approach to data governance. So that's where we enter data GRC. And first off, let's talk about the official definition of governance, risk, and compliance. So not applying it to data specifically, but stepping back. GRC, as defined by the OSEG GRC capability model that I helped contribute to, GRC is a capability that enables an organization to reliably achieve objectives. That's the governance function. You can have entity-level objectives, division, department, process, project, asset, relationship-level objectives, or, getting into that asset objectives, data-level objectives. We need to set objectives and govern those objectives. We need to address uncertainty. That's risk management. ISO 31000 states that risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. And we need to act with integrity. That's the compliance. And that means acting with integrity to the laws and regulations, but also to our own ethics and commitments and values. And even getting into the era of ESG, environmental social governance, and the governance of data, because like you unpack the S and you got definitely privacy there. And you got a lot of challenges with anti-discrimination and those elements, and diversity, inclusivity, that use of data could cause problems, particularly in the AI world. So an integrated data governance approach of strategy, process, and technology requires understanding the interrelationships between data and business operations. The complexity and interconnectedness of data requires a holistic understanding and a coordinated strategy to manage data effectively, reduce risks, and ensure compliance. This approach demands a robust data governance framework that leverages information, structure, and architecture to ensure consistent data governance, data risk management, and data compliance. So taking this definition of broad GRC to a data GRC definition, data governance is there to establish the direction, strategy, and an ontology and information architecture for effective data management, ensuring that data supports business objectives and the reliable achievement of those objectives as they filter down into the data objectives themselves. And that moves on into data risk management, where we identify, assess, and mitigate risk and uncertainty associated with data and its usage in the environment and access. And then we get into data compliance, where we want to ensure the organization acts with integrity, fulfilling regulatory, contractual, and self-imposed data-related obligations and commitments. Organizations require an integrated data GRC approach encompassing strategy, process, and technology to govern data effectively, meet data-related commitments, and manage uncertainties and risks in data management in an efficient, effective, resilient, and agile way. Without a coordinated data GRC strategy and information architecture, organizations lack the insight and context to connect data management and decision-making, business strategy objectives, and performance together. Adopting an integrated approach to data GRC, supported by a common strategy, process, and technology framework, is imperative for organizations aiming to thrive in today's complex business environment. This approach ensures that data governance activities are aligned with broader business objectives and enterprise GRC efforts, providing a clear direction for managing data in the present and in the future. So, that means organizations need a clearly defined data GRC management strategy that is top-down as well as bottoms-up. Top-down, looking at the overall data GRC management strategy and how it's coordinated across the organization, the roles and departments involved, the processes that manage the collection of data, the disposition of data, the access to data, the deletion of data throughout the environment, and the information technology environment that supports the data GRC management strategy and process. But it's also bottoms up because we need to understand things down in the weeds. It's like the butterfly effect. With chaos theory, you have the butterfly effect, which is the theory that the butterfly's wings in the Netherlands makes tiny atmospheric changes that can influence the development path of a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. Those little things matter. So not only do we need a top-down approach, we also need that bottoms-up. What's happening down in the weeds of controls around data, and be aware of that as well. And these need to come together. It also needs to be an iterative cycle. This means that the role of data GRC requires orchestration. You know, if you think about it, there's privacy concerns, there's storage concerns, there's collections concerns, there's access concerns. It's like a conductor of an orchestra, and we have to be able to see across this and make sure everything's working according to plan, according to the piece of music, and something's not going out of line. That's the role of the conductor. We need a data GRC conductor, that data architect and governance role to be able to manage this whole process and be able to see that it comes together. The significance of the organization's reliance on the use and disposition of data is increasingly critical in playing this proactive role in data orchestration for data governance, data risk management, and data compliance, which we are calling data GRC. It is a crucial pillar in an organization's broad enterprise integrated GRC strategy that's too often neglected. This demands that data governance be integrated into the organization's proactive enterprise GRC capabilities and also fulfill governance, risk, and compliance requirements specifically in the context of data. Hence, we have data GRC as a focus within the broader enterprise GRC. So today's data management teams must fully comprehend the risks associated with data's privacy, accuracy, accessibility, and security. So some of the teams that need to get together in this data GRC strategy include the legal and compliance teams, who determine what data needs to be managed and how it needs to be managed. Then you have the records management team. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Who is responsible for working with the other teams to define the organization's data GRC ontology and information architecture, implement the records management program, and ensure business users understand records management policies and enforce these policies when creating and managing content. You have the IT team, including the CIO and a CDO, the Chief Data Officer, who are responsible for ensuring business systems reinforce those policies. You have the audit and assurance team, who validates and provides assurance that controls are in place and effective. You have the e-discovery and analytics teams, who have traditionally operated in isolation but need to work together in this context. You have the privacy team, where privacy requirements impact everyone and drive the need for an integrated approach to data GRC. You have the IT security or information security teams that ensure that data security with robust measures while collaborating with legal and compliance to be able to align practices with legal requirements and meet our obligations. You have the enterprise and information architecture teams that shape the organization's data landscape and establishes ontologies and data models that comply with governance policies and support organizational goals. You have the role of resilience, particularly when we're dealing with things like the EU DORA, Digital Operational Resilience Act, the UK Operational Resilience, the US OCC Guidance on Operational Resilience, Australia's CPS 230, and so much more, where the resilience teams focus on responding to and recovering from cyber threats, collaborating with IT and security teams to validate security controls. You have the role of content owners, who are responsible for the creation, management, and governance of specific content, ensuring alignment with the organization's ontology and information architecture. You also have the application owners that are accountable for aligning business applications with data management policies and collaborates with IT, legal, and enterprise architecture teams to integrate policies into application development and maintenance processes. These teams must together collaborate and understand how their collective objectives, risks, and obligations interconnect and fit into broader business operational and GRC processes. The data steward or chief data officer plays a vital role in leading these teams, extending beyond traditional responsibilities to actively contribute to the organization's strategic data planning, ensuring effective data governance and management. These data GRC teams and the overall strategy can serve as a hub for discussions on balancing data-related risks and opportunities. They must guide the organization to assure stakeholders that the company can maintain data integrity, mitigate data risks and such as data breaches, and operate within legal and ethical boundaries around data. This involves optimizing data opportunities while adhering to data protection laws, industry regulations, as well as corporate policies themselves. And all this leads to developing those data GRC business champions. As a central player in the GRC strategic plan, data management must address the demands and concerns of a variety of stakeholders, from executives and regulators to investors. And with some of these is the ability to identify indicators of data GRC changes. Being on the front line of data activities, teams need to be aware of changes due to the mergers and acquisitions, data collection practices, modifications in data processing tools, and new or changing data protection legislation. We need to be able to define required controls, to be able to establish controls to mitigate data-related risks in transactions and relationships while supporting business strategy and objectives. We need to be able to interpret legal requirements to identify data protection, classification, storage, sovereignty, retention, disposition, and access requirements, interpreting the need for controls to address them in your business's legal context. We need to be able to monitor regulatory compliance and change. And the organizations need to ensure that compliance with data protection, retention, disposition, accountability, production, and audit regulations by ensuring controls are correct and current in the dynamic business environment. And monitoring regulatory compliance is not just to the letter of the law of regulation itself, but it's also monitoring the enforcement actions and how they interpret those regulations and legislation and apply them, because enforcement evolves over time. We need to be able to design the data GRC program. We need to be able to participate in the design of the data GRC program, addressing issues related to data architecture, confidentiality, access requirements, and governance. We need to assess non-compliance impacts, where be able to assess the potential impacts of non-compliance to determine the correct level of control and allocation of resources. We need to clearly develop escalation plans for data incidents and breaches, defining when immediate action is required, when to inform the board or external stakeholders, and when to conduct specific investigations. We need to clearly understand business opportunities around data to be able to enable safe and responsible business growth, avoiding unnecessary legal exposure related to data. This includes AI and its components of machine learning as well. The responsible approach is to understand and proactively mitigate the potential risks by establishing the necessary controls around AI and data and the use of data within AI. We need to be able to communicate with the board on data GRC, to be able to articulate to the board how an integrated view of data governance is essential to the organization's culture, performance, and particularly fiduciary obligations and responsibilities. We need to optimize the data management team and process to be able to manage data in a way that delivers efficient, effective, agile, and I also say resilient and responsive service to the rest of the organization. And then we need to be able to leverage technology to understand how technology can improve, facilitate data management. Across these points, data GRC must adopt a strategic view, satisfying various demands while focusing on achieving the organization's objectives for data. This pushes forward-thinking organizations to define and establish an expanded role for data GRC, going beyond traditional data management roles to become a valuable GRC advisor around data. Through the life cycles of the business, the cycles and patterns from the rhythm of data GRC, how it's collected, and how it's the disposition of it and access of it to the deletion of it all become critically important. And these cycles and patterns happen throughout the organization. And we need to be able to manage data GRC throughout these, not just in points in time, but continually in the organization. So we need a clear framework for data GRC processes. The global business environment is extremely complex with ongoing economic, political, social, legal, and regulatory changes. Organizations face exponential growth and often conflicting and overlapping data-related requirements, expanding alongside global operations, which is all exponentially compounded by the growth and use of data. They must reliably achieve objectives while addressing and asserting active integrity in data management, getting back to our definition. The primary directive of a mature data GRC management program is to deliver effectiveness, efficiency, resilience, and agility in data governance. This requires an integrated approach to manage the broad spectrum of data-related risks to organizational performance, objectives, and strategy. The data GRC team needs to function at a higher level of maturity to enable resilience and agility being optimized to deliver efficient, effective, and agile service to the organization. Data GRC management processes should be used to manage and monitor the ever-changing data risk environment with a clear architectural framework. This framework inventories and describes data GRC management processes, their components, interactions, and how these all work together with other enterprise processes. So data GRC processes are absolutely essential to drive efficiency, effectiveness, resilience, and agility in data GRC. While data GRC governance processes can be very detailed and vary by organization and industry, the core elements and the core process areas we break out into 5 components. The first one is data discovery and classification, the ability to identify and classify data from diverse sources and ensure metadata is accurate so dark data can be exposed and managed appropriately. This is also critical concerning data sovereignty requirements. The second one is data collection management. While this is a component of the following lifecycle management, it is also critical to call out in itself. Ensuring legal and compliant data collection practices that account for privacy considerations while managing the volume and velocity of incoming data. Data collection practices should also ensure storage optimization, regulatory compliance, and risk mitigation, such as security, privacy, retention, and disposition risks. To manage the volume and velocity of incoming data effectively, inactive and compliant data must be physically moved out of the production environment to reduce storage costs and further protect the data from modification, deletion, or even a data breach. Privileged users have unrestricted access to data in the production environment. The organization can remove their access to a file's content by archiving the data. And this moves into data lifecycle. Once we collect the data, it's the lifecycle of that data's use in the organization, where we establish clear data ownership, implement data quality measures, and manage data from creation to deletion. At some point, the risk of maintaining information, all this data, in operational system exceeds the remaining intrinsic value of the data. Data incurs higher costs in production, including storage and data processing or search costs. The longer the data is in production, the greater the risk of modification, deletion, or a data breach. And then we have data access management as the fourth component. To ensure secure and controlled access to data, managing user permissions, and balancing accessibility of data protection requirements are all vital, we can say critical, to meeting contractual, regulatory, and operational obligations, customer, partner, investor, and employee expectations, and maintaining a good reputation. And then finally, the fifth area of concern in our data GRC process is data analysis oversight, where we need to implement responsible data analysis practices to ensure transparency in tools and algorithms and balance analytics needs with privacy and security. AI introduces new risks to the organization. Some social, cultural, and ethical risks have already been identified, but many risks associated with planned AI deployment have yet to be considered. Organizations developing and deploying AI should consider the legal implications. Algorithms can or will be subject to retention requirements and legal discovery. Should a flaw be detected in an algorithm, having a consistent process for managing its updates, retention, and disposition will significantly mitigate that risk. Organizations can achieve data objectives by adopting a strategic and integrated approach to data GRC while maintaining data integrity, mitigating data-related risks, and ensuring compliance with relevant laws and regulations. So looking at data GRC becomes inefficient when information is dispersed, redundant, unreliable, and managed in isolated parts. Standard tools like documents, spreadsheets, and emails, oh my, are insufficient for capturing, managing, and reporting the intricate relationships within data processes. Information reporting spanning operations, relationships, business lines, transactions, and various business functions. Therefore, the data GRC information architecture supports the process architecture and the overarching data GRC strategy. It encompasses the structural design, classification, utilization, flow, processing, and reporting of data GRC information, ensuring support for necessary legal and business processes. A robust data GRC management architecture will seamlessly connect information across risk management and business and communication and / messaging systems. Requiring a flexible and comprehensive data GRC information architecture can encapsulate the complexity of data transactions, interactions, relationships, cause and effect, and information analysis. It should also be able to manage various business systems and external data. Central to this is maintaining a clear data inventory and mapping that informs the organization about its data assets, data ownership, regulatory and retention requirements, as well as third-party access and that extended enterprise of vendors and suppliers and outsourcers and contractors and more. This is all fundamental for effective processes and applying this to a broad GRC management strategy. The data GRC technology architecture translates the information and process components into operational support for the overall data GRC strategy. The appropriate technology architecture enables the organization to manage data GRC risks and processes effectively and facilitate documentation, communication, reporting, and monitoring of various data-related operations, tasks, responsibilities, and actions and activities. A central core technology platform for data GRC is essential, acting as the hub that interconnects the organization's various data processes, information, and other technologies. It should be able to integrate with multiple business systems, such as specialized risk systems and external data sources. Many organizations basically witness the failure of data GRC initiatives when they prematurely invest in technology without first understanding their process, information, architecture, and requirements. The choice in technology architectures include those manual approaches of documents, spreadsheets, and emails. These manual processes are prone to failure, leading to an overwhelming amount of data that is difficult to maintain, difficult to aggregate, and difficult to report on, which consumes valuable resources and time. But then you have organizations that have scattered point solutions and still probably a lot of manual processes with documents, spreadsheets, and emails. But those point solutions are implemented across numerous little areas for specific data requirements for data risk or compliance. And all these different little silos can lead to redundancy in information gathering and communication, taxing the organization's ability to manage data. What organizations should be looking for is a data GRC platform. These are comprehensive solutions that offer a central hub for information and data process control, providing overall analysis and reporting. They enable an organization to govern data throughout its lifecycle and facilitate enterprise-wide integration and reporting. The correct choice in data GRC technology architectures involves integrating capabilities into a core platform solution, enabling the correlation and integration of data information, analytics, and reporting. A short-sighted view of data GRC technology fails to connect all these aspects of the business that can have detrimental impacts on the organization's analytics, performance, objectives, and strategy around data. Modern data GRC solutions offer greater user experience, connectivity, integrates with other systems, and provides advanced analytical capabilities that leverage artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, machine learning, and natural language processing. Some key capabilities in this space to be looking at, one is scalability, the ability to handle large data volumes, processing at desired speeds to meet cost and performance requirements. Next is security, to provide role-based, attribute-based, and encryption-based access controls with control over encryption keys and data immutability. And then you've got scope to handle all types of data in native formats, collect data from various sources, and customize applications using open source and standards. And then you've got the whole integration piece, where we need to be able to ensure seamless interaction with other technologies and competencies within the organization to provide cross-system visibility and control of your organization's data. You've got areas of content workflow and task management to be able to tag content for proper routing and establish workflows. Information governance and classification to create a modern, actionable enterprise class-based data inventory. A good core policy engine to drive information governance and classification, recording all user activities associated with the data to ensure authenticity and defensibility. And then you've got 360-degree contextual awareness of data to provide a comprehensive view of data in the context of its disposition, retention, use, and access in the organization. And then you should also look for accountability allocation to ensure accountability through tracking, ownership, and maintaining compliance. And then reporting and trending to be able to manage, monitor, and report on data risks and processes. Data analytics and modeling is another core capability to support a range of analytics and modeling for diverse business needs. Understanding the interrelationship of data risks to the data with technology that can identify, classify, and understand the relationships of data risks to provide context and valuable insights. Scalability, the ability to handle large data volumes, processing at desired speeds to meet cost and performance requirements. Security, I've already mentioned in scalability, actually, now I think about it. We get into data enrichment. We utilize AI and machine learning for content extraction from unstructured files, transcribing audio, video, translating languages, identifying text within images, detecting objects, entities, and analyzing sentiment. I think I said data collection. I think I skipped over it. The integration and classification capabilities to streamline and organize data collection processes. The overall data lifecycle management that we talked about. Technology capabilities to ensure data value exceeds risks. Retire critical data to a secure governance platform when risks outweigh value, and implement disposition workflows and certification. We need search and data discovery requirements where metadata and full text indexing, advanced text search, and SQL queries for effective and efficient data discovery. Case management or incident management to be able to annotate, manage legal holds, and implement workflows for organized case management. Reporting and analytics, I've already talked a little bit about in a previous point, but to be able to generate data, discovery, ingestion, chain of custody disposition, review, certification, activity logs, and custom user reports for comprehensive reporting and analytics, and of course, data access. The ability to integrate with with third-party tools such as e-discovery and analytics and data modeling applications, so hence data access and utilization. This also includes the ability for data discovery management, data process management, and overall data storage management. Now, implementing a data GRC management strategy in a platform like our host today, Archive360, should make your program more efficient in time and money, more effective at reducing risk exposure and meeting compliance requirements, less things slipping through cracks, more getting done, more resilient to find issues and incidents around data and contain them when they're still small before they become big, and agility to adapt to a very changing and dynamic business environment through mergers and acquisitions and changing laws, regulations, and risks that impact data. So some quick 5-step plan for data GRC strategy. First off, it's critical to plan your journey by laying out the route ahead of time. There's something happening today with data governance, risk management, and compliance in your organization. It can be this ad hoc firefighting. We're doing something when somebody's screaming at us, to very mature and agile and integrated. Now, the question is, what is your current state and what needs to change for this ideal future state, and what's your roadmap to get there? Then you need to get all the right team members on board. We had that whole slide going through all those team members from legal and privacy and content owners and application owners and many, many more. Enterprise information architecture, privacy, legal, and all these different roles. You need to get that team on board working together. But the next one's absolutely critical. You need the right technology foundation to achieve your vision, that future state of what you're trying to achieve with data GRC. You need to carefully select that tool that can meet those requirements and provide value to your organization. But there's a lot of data in the organization. Organizations are complex. We need to break things up into stages that are achievable You don't just run up Mount Everest. You climb Mount Everest too quickly. What happens? You die. Your body actually has to acclimate to the altitudes at certain base camps before you're physically ready to get to the next level. And the same thing with a big data GRC project is you need to be able to tackle it in stages. But you also need to be ready for change. That's the one thing that is very certain as we enter 2024 is that there's going to be changes to data in our organization, the requirements and risks. There's going to be new laws and regulations. There's going to be new ways and interpretations that play out in enforcement actions, new threat landscapes and vectors, and so much more. Mergers and acquisitions. We need to be ready to adapt to a very dynamic business environment as well. So, mature data GRC capabilities achieve the following 10 objectives: the ability to reduce the cost of data compliance, to accelerate legacy system decommissioning and data migration, retire critical data from production environments to less costly, more secure storage, strictly control data accessibility and visibility, accelerate data discovery, centralize data management, automate data compliance, consistently control data costs and risks, ensure data authenticity, defensibility, and audit readiness, and drive better informed business decisions because we've got more reliable and accessible data to the business. So that brings us to this conclusion: to be able to provide 360-degree contextual awareness of data governance, risk, and compliance. Data GRC processes and technology empower organizations to judiciously utilize their resources, minimizing undesirable outcomes while maximizing benefits in pursuit of their goals. A primary aim is to ensure that data governance and management processes are meticulously designed to mitigate significant data-related risks and function as intended. Effectively managing data risk and exposure is critical for the board and executive management, necessitating a reliable method for assuring stakeholders that the enterprise is committed to preserving and measuring and generating value. Mature data GRC enables the organization to integrate diverse inputs from across business and messaging and other communication environments, employing various methodologies for data risk analysis, and providing advanced analytics and modeling. Data governance, risk, and compliance, data GRC, necessitates a holistic approach integrating process, information, and technology to identify, analyze, manage, and monitor data risks, capturing changes in the organization's profile as they arise from internal and external events. This facilitates a top-down risk perspective led by executives and the board, embedding it into the business's core rather than treating it as a separate oversight layer. Concurrently, it encourages bottom-up engagement where business functions at all levels actively identify and monitor uncertainties and risk impacts around data. Organizations aspiring to enhance their data GRC maturity become increasingly aware. They're keen to maintain a constant pulse on the organization and its use of data. They vigilantly observe changes in the business's diverse data environments that could introduce data risks and exposure. This necessitates transforming data into actionable information, ensuring it's secure and accessible across all pertinent channels. They become aligned. There is a necessity to synchronize business objectives with data GRC to support and enrich these business objectives. This involves perpetually aligning the integrated data GRC capabilities with the entities, incorporating strategic insights from risk management to drive necessary adjustments to data governance and use. They also become more responsive. To respond effectively, organizations must first perceive the risk to data. Mature data GRC concentrates on heightened awareness and comprehension of information that informs decisions and actions, enhancing transparency while swiftly navigating through data to pinpoint what is essential for informed decision-making. They also become agile. Stakeholders demand agility. The business demands agility, and agility beyond speed. The organization must also be flexible. Speed is futile if misdirected and misaligned. The organization needs robust data GRC processes and technology to ensure rapid data governance in changing business operations, systems, and processes. Agility empowers the entity to convert risk into opportunities, seize strategic data initiatives confidently, and maintain its strategic trajectory. They also become resilient. Even the best plans go awry. Organizations need resilience to recover swiftly from data-related changes, risks, and incidents, minimizing business disruption. They aspire to have adequate tolerances for occasional missteps and the agility to quickly adapt and seize emerging opportunities. They also become more efficient by leveraging technology. The goal is to build organizational robustness while eliminating wasteful practices and removing expenses tied to unnecessary duplication, redundancy, and of course, resource misallocation. The result is a leaner organization with enhanced capabilities and informed decisions regarding data use while mitigating risk exposure. Growing in data governance, data risk management, data compliance, that is data GRC maturity, emphasizes the need for organizations to be aware, aligned, responsive, agile, resilient, and efficient in their approach to data GRC, integrating processes, information, and technology to manage data risks and seize opportunities effectively. So with that, we're going to turn this over to questions. Sharon, what do we have for questions that might have come in?
Thank you, Michael. That was great. So our first question is, how do you go about building a business case to get support for a data GRC strategy?
You go about building a business case for a data GRC strategy. Well, first off, it goes back to those 5 slides I had of all like sort of the mountaineering expedition. I mean, you need to clearly understand what your current state is. What are you doing today? What's working? What's not working? What is costing the organization? What's your future state? What do you want to achieve? What should this look like in 1 year or 2 years from now? And then what's the difference, between this current state and future state? How does it make me more efficient in time and resources? How does it make me more effective in finding and mitigating data risks and meeting compliance requirements? How does it make me more resilient for finding issues and containing when they're still small? And also agile to adapt to a changing business. Each of those areas of efficiency, effectiveness, resilience, and agility can be quantified into a business case.
Okay, so next question. What are some of the roadblocks or challenges in starting a data GRC strategy?
Not having a clear understanding of what you're trying to achieve. Another one is, somebody that's leading it that can't work across departments and silos very well and get other people inspired. They might be the right role and department, but if they're the wrong individual that isn't effective at developing a strategy that can cross multiple departments and initiatives and get them to work together, they can be the wrong person. The other one that I come across is departments that don't want to participate. They dig in their heels saying, we do our thing our way, leave us alone, you go do your thing, go away. A lot of times those departments are just scared because they don't want to share how bad their data governance practices are and don't realize we're all sort of in the same boat. But those are some of the roadblocks I see.
Very good. I just wanted to remind everyone that if you do have a question, you can use the Q&A function on the control panel on Zoom. And I do have another question. What culturally and organizationally needs to change for a data GRC strategy?
First off, top-down support. I mean, as we've already mentioned, involves multiple departments working together collectively and collaboratively. So you need clear executive sponsorship and support behind this. And then you need that clear vision and mission statement, and probably even a charter for data GRC that gets all these different groups working together collaboratively on this. And I also would say that culturally, this also should tie into the ESG strategy, environmental social governance. Particularly on the S and the G, there's a lot of data governance aspects that play into both the S and the G, particularly in ESG.
Okay. I don't see any more questions, audience. If going once, going twice, I have a few closing announcements. So this does conclude our webinar for today. If you have any questions and they come up later on after the webinar is over, feel free to reach out to us at info@archive360.com. A link to the webinar recording and corresponding white paper and slides will be sent out to all attendees in 1 to 2 business days, and we will also post them to our website. Please stay connected to us. The blog, there was the subscribe to our blog, subscribe to our podcast. And we have more informative webinars like this throughout the year. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for staying with us to the end of this webinar, and we wish everyone a great day. Thank you, everyone.